To some extent, being an entrepreneur is a lonely journey. Chad Hurley. On today's episode, imagine buying a business that you thought would take your company to the next level, only to find out that it was on a downward spiral and could not be saved. Welcome to the Stitched for Success podcast, where we are teaching business and life lessons that will help you launch, grow, or scale your creative business. I am Monica Allen, and I'm a wife, mom, daughter, entrepreneur, author, friend, lifelong learner, and host of this podcast. For over 8 years, I was stuck in corporate and dreamt of escaping. Creating a side hustle with just $700 and having taken the leap over 15 years ago, we have since grown multiple six-figure and seven-figure brands. Being an entrepreneur for over 18 years has afforded me many successes and a few failures. I want to share those with you so you can grow and be successful in your business. Take a listen to the second part of my interview with Hayley Luckadoo from Luckadoo Media. I like to call Hayley the accidental serial entrepreneur. If you missed the first half of my interview with her, be sure to go back and check out episode 46. What would you say was one of the biggest challenges you had when you first started the wedding planning business?
Yeah, so many. That's a great question. I think for me personally, because I didn't have a business background, I had never even really planned to do what I did. I think for me, it was like figuring out the time component, like just figuring out, okay, I have this laundry list of things that I need to learn how to do. I was trying to do a blog and network with other vendors and get couples to come in and work with me and update my website. And I didn't know any better. So I was doing all of it on my own. And at the time, I think it was just a matter of saying, okay, how can I be the most productive that I can be and actually get all this done without working 24/7, right? Because we all want to start businesses, but we don't want to sign our life away to that business. We want to find time to hang out with our family, hang out with our friends, go enjoy a hobby, take a walk, have a life, right?
Right.
And so for me, I've always been kind of a workaholic. I'm a recovering workaholic, if you will. And I'm still like that a little bit to a degree, but in the beginning, especially, it was like, okay, I have to make this work because I have to pay the bills and I have no fallback plan. I don't have a degree. I'm not going to be able to get another job. Like I have to make this work. And I think it was that level of pressure and resilience that got me to where I am. But at the same time, it was that pressure that kind of kept me working, all hours of the day, late into the night, weekends, as much as I possibly could, even sometimes when I didn't necessarily need to, because I would fine tune everything and think it needed to be so perfect. So for me, I think that was the biggest struggle in the beginning.
Yeah. And I can relate to that. I really enjoy what I do. So sometimes even when I do have time to just kind of chill, I think of something that I could be working on, and that actually makes me excited. So it doesn't even feel like work. It feels like fun,
right?
Which, people think we're a little crazy, but it's kind of fun.
When you love what you do, it's hard to pull yourself away from it. But even when you really love what you do, there is such a thing as too much, right? Like even when you absolutely love your job, love your business, love every part of it, there's still, you need to take time away from the computer screen. You need to take time to go be with other people, right? And I did not understand that in the beginning at all.
Right. I totally understand that for sure. If there was one thing that you could tell someone who may be looking for someone to help them with their social media, their Instagram, their Pinterest, what's one thing you would tell someone to look for?
I think the biggest thing is just finding somebody that you're compatible to work with. So, if you're looking at somebody and they're saying, okay, we do these services that you need, but your personalities don't really mesh well together, then it's not going to be a good fit. It's never going to work out. And I know when we think about outsourcing things, especially like our social media and stuff like that, it's easy to say, oh, well, I'm going to hand it over to this person. They're going to handle it. So who cares if our personalities match up, right? Like who cares if we get along? They're just doing this thing for me. It's not like we have to work together in an office every day. But the reality is, if if they don't understand you and your personality and they don't get that, they're not going to be able to get your vision for your business, for your company, for your clients. And if they can't get your vision, they can't capture your voice. And if they can't capture your voice, then they're not going to be able to provide those services very well. Even if it's, something like podcast editing, where you're not really writing like a caption. If I don't know what the end goal is for my client and what they're hoping to achieve with this podcast, then I don't know which parts need to be cut out. I don't know which parts, where we need to cut out pieces, or how to, arrange things to make it work. Like, I don't know what the graphics need to look like that I'm creating for this episode. Right. So I think really understanding who it is that you're working with, what it is that they value in their own business, and how they typically work with clients, what their communication style is, right? Because that's a big part of our personalities, is how we choose to communicate, how often we choose to communicate. And if you don't know that going in, 90% of the time, you're going to have unmet expectations. There's going to be disappointment involved, right? And then you're starting that relationship out on the wrong foot. If you have to chase them down and say, well, hey, when am I going to hear from you? Why haven't I gotten an email from you? And they're like, well, we're doing our job. Why would we email you? And you're like, but I just want like a check-in. That should have been explained in the beginning. And that's literally just a personality thing and a communication issue. So to me, I think that's the number one thing, is don't ever just hire one person, right? Like, get on calls with a couple different people, unless you just know right off the bat, like, I love this person, I want to work with them, I know them well, our personalities match up. But if you really are looking for somebody, find a few different people, get on calls with them, like, see this person, face to face, whether it's on Zoom or whatever, and really just kind of get to know the heart behind their business, because you need to understand that to know if they're going to be able to capture the heart behind yours.
Oh, that was so brilliant, Hayley. That was so brilliant. I love the phrase capture your voice. Yeah. Just the fact that is so important, because you do want your brand to have a voice. And I often tell people, your brand does have a voice, even if they don't know who's behind it, your brand does have a voice.
Absolutely.
And so I love that. Capture your voice. That is fantastic. Love that. So tell me a little bit about what led you to Females on Fire, and tell us a little bit about the podcast.
Well, again, in true Hayley Luckady fashion, I never planned on doing it. Honestly, I got lonely, right? Like, we're entrepreneurs. A lot of us work from home. Even if we outsource things, like, we work by ourselves, right? And I got so lonely, and that sounds so lame, but that's what happened. I got lonely, and I was like, I just want to connect with other women in business, right? And I was connecting with a lot of people, on Instagram and at networking events and things like that. But I was like, I want to do more. Like, I'm going to challenge myself to just reach out to like one woman and ask her to hop on a Zoom call with me for 30 minutes to an hour, just get to know her, hear what she's, an expert in, and just connect, right? I'm going to challenge myself to do one of these a week. And I did it for about 3 weeks and didn't record it. Obviously, it was just, the whole point was to connect with these women. And after 3 weeks of doing it, I was like, all of these women like taught me something during the conversation, right? Like, they were telling me about what they do and like giving me all these insights into it. And I was like, I'm just going to start recording these. Like, I'm just going to start recording it. Podcasting was kind of starting to really get big. And I was like, I'll just throw it up as a podcast. Who cares if anybody listens to it? Maybe it'll help somebody else. That was the goal. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to turn it into a podcast. I did like 2 of them a month. I only recorded like 2 of them a month, and people started listening. And a bunch of people who followed me on Instagram were like, hey, I found your podcast. This was so good. I loved this guest. I love this thing. And I was like, oh, there's people actually listening to this. So I went into my podcast host, and for the first time, I had been doing this for like 2 months, I looked at the stats, and I was like, oh my gosh, there's really people listening to this. Like, what is that? That's crazy. And so I started doing them every week. and really like tried to hone in on like, okay, how do you grow a podcast? Like, how do you make a podcast look good? And now I've been doing it for 2.5 years, and, it's come a very long way. But I love it. I really found a passion for podcast hosting. And that's ultimately what actually got me into speaking. But I've met, quote unquote, met so many amazing women during these interviews. And I've done some solo shows as well, just trying to, give my own insights into things. But every woman comes on just absolutely killing it at what she does. Right. And to get to learn from her while also being able to ask the questions that everybody wants to ask, and being able to share that and build a community around it. Cause I always say Females on Fire is way more than a podcast. It's a community. And you really see that, we've started doing Clubhouse rooms, and we've always had a Facebook group, and it really is a community of people of women who are really passionate about watching each other grow and about helping each other, go up a level. And to me, there's so much power in that. And to know that it all stemmed out of me just being lonely and wanting to record these little interviews I was doing. It's just so phenomenal to think about, because in the moment when you're starting something, you never realize the level that it's going to get to. You never realize the impact that it's going to make. And so I think, to me, the podcast is probably in my opinion, the most impactful part of my business, because I can work with clients on their marketing all day long, and that's fun for me. And I love it. I'm so passionate about it. But every single week, these episodes come out, and I get messages and DMs and all of the stuff from women who are like, this is what I needed right now. This is what I was looking for. This changed my business. This pushed me to go do something. And that is the most powerful thing in the world. So I'm so passionate about this podcast. I love it so much.
Oh, I can definitely hear your passion in your voice. And it's funny, you mentioned being lonely. That's one of the reasons I started this podcast, is because in quarantine, I was lonely. I mean, I have 2 kids and a husband, but I wanted to talk to someone else, to engage and talk about business and the ups and downs of business, and help other people learn from my mistakes and my successes and all of that. So I totally get that, but I love, and I can hear the passion in your voice on the podcast, and I love it. So
thank you.
I wish you much, much success on that for sure. And so Hayley, tell me, what would you say is one of the biggest mistakes? I mean, I know you've had several businesses, and you have several businesses, you have a lot of stuff going on, but what is one thing that has happened within your business that you were like, wow, that was a mistake, and I have learned greatly from that?
Oh gosh. There's so many to choose from. I don't know. To me, I'm one of those people that I hate the phrase, everything happens for a reason. I don't like that. I think there's too many horrible things that happen for you to say everything happens for a reason. Right. But especially when it comes to my business, and for me in my own life, it's not that I believe everything happens for a reason, but I do believe that we can learn something from everything. And so every person that's ever walked in or out of my life, I'm like, I definitely learned something from that person, good, bad, or indifferent. I learned something, right? And it's the same way with those experiences. Everything that I've ever tried in my business taught me something. And I've had so many mistakes and so many failures that it's so hard to pick one, because they all really did teach me something, even if it was that tiny little lesson that I just needed to learn right then. But if I had to really just narrow it down to one, I think this was my most costly mistake. So I'll share that.
Those are usually the ones we remember.
Yeah, this one just sticks out a lot, but I actually bought a business. So I had a third business. And this was back when I was still running the wedding planning company and had already started Luckady Media. And I bought a business. I was approached by another woman in my town in the wedding industry. And it was a wedding vendor, membership type business. Okay. Everybody paid in each month, and we hosted these events, and I was a member of it for a while. And so she came to me, she was like, I'm going to sell it. Do you want to buy the business? And I was like, yeah. So my big lesson in here was absolutely start before you're ready. Like anything you do in life, in business, you're never going to be ready. So jump in, like take the risk, but make yourself aware first of what it is that you're getting into. Right. Because like, as long as, I don't believe in pausing and taking time to think about it when it's a you problem, when you're worried if you can do it, if you can handle it. But make sure that you know what the actual thing is that you're jumping into and that you really have all the details of that. Because for me, I bought this business. We paid a lot of money for this business. And I was very unaware and was not made aware, unfortunately, of the downward trajectory of this business. It was more implied to me that the business was doing really well. It was very profitable. It had all these members. And I knew it had a lot of members because I had been a member. What I didn't know was that all the members were talking and all the members wanted out because it was really going downhill and it wasn't as profitable as I thought it was when I bought it. And so I spent a year of my life while running 2 other businesses trying to force this thing and make it work instead of just recognizing that I needed to cut my losses and it was time and I had made a mistake. I did not want to admit that I made a mistake. I wanted it to work so badly. And I kept forcing it and forcing it and forcing it. And when I say forcing it, I mean, I was spending way too much time just trying to get new ideas, host new events, do this, do that, all of this stuff. And after about a year, the numbers for the members had just dwindled so much. People were like, I'm so sorry that you bought this. Like, I feel so bad for you. And we had done our best and people, told us like, we know that you tried, this was really cool. But there was no saving this. Like, you're going down with the ship now. And at that point, it was just like, okay, you know what? It's just going to be better to close it down and get my time back and go focus on the businesses that I care about. And that was right around the same time that I was so burnt out. I was like, something's got to give. And just getting rid of this is not going to be enough. So that's about the same time that I closed down the wedding planning company. And in doing that, I just felt this weight lifted off my chest. So I don't know. I think the lesson in there is just if it's a you thing and you're worried that you're not qualified enough for it, you're not ready, whatever, jump in, go do it because you're never going to be ready. It's never going to be the right time, right? For anything.
Right.
But just make sure that in terms of the actual thing that you're jumping into, that you have the details, that you understand what it's going to take, what it's going to cost you, what it's going to mean for you 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, and what is the vision that you have for that thing going in, and just making sure that that vision lines up with all the logistics, right?
Right.
And I've every single time I've ever had an opportunity since then, I'm always like getting all of the details, right? Like I want to know everything before I say yes. But then even now, I still don't hesitate to say yes when I know that it's the right fit for me and when it's a good idea for me. So I don't really regret it because it taught me a big lesson that I needed at the time.
Right.
But if I could have those dollars back, I'm telling you.
Yeah. Did you have a sense of tension in the decision, or did you feel really good about the decision at the time?
I have always said I think I'm a very intuitive person. I get gut feelings very, very strongly. And every time I've ever listened, it worked out. And every time I didn't, it didn't work out. And for me at that time, I really did have this gut feeling that something was off and that maybe this wasn't the best idea. But at the time, I was like, it's a really profitable business that basically runs itself. And I hate to say it, but I was really looking at the money and I was like, this could be a really good source of income for me. I could use that money in a lot of different ways to, use that income in a lot of different ways. And it seemed like a quick fix. to the income situation that I was in, like just wanting to do all of these extra things in my other businesses and know
Right.
that I had to kind of wait till I got a certain income. And I was like, this is a quick fix, right? It runs itself. It's not going to take a lot of my time. So, there's another lesson. Quick fixes are never the option. But I did feel like I had like a gut feeling that I just didn't listen to. And I probably should have.
No, I get it. I have that gut feeling when it comes to when I'm hiring.
Yeah.
And I've learned to listen to it more now, but in the beginning I would kind of ignore it and I'll say, "Oh no, they'll be perfect."
Right.
And lo and behold,
They never
it's
were.
never perfect. I should have listened to my gut. And so, yeah, that's one of the things I think as business owners, oftentimes we fight against the tension that we feel, and instead of listening to it. So
True. So true.
I have been there. I've been there. So Hayley, tell me, what keeps you going? What wakes you up in the morning and gets you excited?
I am a very big dreamer. I hate that phrase. I think it's a little bit cheesy, but it just fits, right? I'm a very big dreamer. I've got huge goals that I am nowhere near yet. And I know a lot of the times as entrepreneurs, we're those people, right? That we set a big goal. When we do get there, we already have our eyes on a bigger goal, right? So we like don't even take the time to celebrate it.
Right.
But I really have a pretty detailed and specific vision for what I want this business to grow into, what I want it to look like, what I want my life to look like because of the business. And that really alone is what keeps me going. My husband is a big part of that because he just champions me with everything that I do. He's a huge supporter of my business. I've got great family who backs me up all the time. So those are definitely components of that helps me keep going when, things aren't working out the way I wanted them to. But for me, it's just that reminder of this is where I want to go. And if I quit now, then it's never going to be an option, right? Because I think it's so easy for us to be like, oh, well, things are hard and I want to quit. And, maybe I'll try again later, or maybe I'll try again when I get X amount of money or X amount of time, or when this thing settles down, or when this thing feels better or whatever. But the truth is you may not ever get another opportunity. And, not to be one of those people, but like we're not promised tomorrow. And I just think for me, getting into business the way that I did and having it not be planned and just literally going out of pure resilience and determination, those have always been the foundations of my business for me and of everything that I do. And so anytime something happens, I'm like constantly reminding myself, like, look how far you've come in these couple of years. Look where you started. You had no intentions of doing this, and look what you've built already. And now look at where you want to go. And if you quit now, or if you give up now, or if you take the day off now, on a day that you didn't plan to take off, then you're giving up. And if you give up, you may never get this chance again. You may never get this opportunity. And there are people that would kill for this opportunity. So for me, that alone, that resilience and determination and just the passion for what I do, that definitely gets me up in the morning and keeps me up late into the night.
I can tell it definitely gives you energy and it gives you that fire. I can see it in you. And I think for a lot of us, like we end up in things and we didn't really plan it. I mean, you have a vision, but you kind of stumble into it a lot of times. So those are often the most successful ones. I often tell people, that 30-page business plan that they taught. Well, I went to an MBA program and I took an entrepreneurship class, and I remember doing a 30-page business plan. No one reads that.
No.
Like a banker's not even reading that. So
I'm all about planning. I'm all about, make the revenue plans, plan out the content strategy and the social media calendars, and, have a 5-year vision for your business and a 10. I'm all about it. But I also believe that you can't be so stuck to that plan that you're not adaptable, right? We talked about this earlier about just being able to pivot, being able to adapt. And I think the most successful businesses in the world, the people you look up to, people you follow on Instagram, those are the people who knew how to adapt. They knew how to pivot. That was the thing that grew their business. I think that is the thing that will grow your business faster every single time, is just being able to say, okay, here's what my market looks like. Here's what my clients look like. Here's what my life looks like, right? Like I've got to be able to adapt and pivot into those things and not be afraid of that. I think a lot of the time we get really, really stuck on, this is how I've always done it. And I think that's the most dangerous thing that we can say is this is how it's always been done, because that's not a good enough reason to keep doing it that way. Right.
Right. And things happen like 2020.
Yep.
Speaking of 2020, I have just a couple more questions for you, but what was your 2020 like?
If I'm being honest, my 2020 was okay. I know like we're all expected to be like, oh, it was horrible. It was so hard, but my 2020 was okay. And I know it was not that way for so many people. And I absolutely like sympathize and empathize with that. I really do. But for me, I already worked from home. That was not an adjustment at all. Most of my business was already online anyway. That was not an adjustment at all. My husband was very fortunate that he was in a required field. So he works in like the agriculture field, works with a lot of landscapers, things like that. So he was still required to go to work. He never got laid off or anything, but also works in a company where he's literally like by himself in the office a lot of the day. And if he is around people, it's usually just these one or two guys. So he didn't have to be around people a lot, but still got to work. So we were just very, very fortunate. And it is not lost on me how fortunate we were. But I made more money in my business last year than I have made any other year. It's my most profitable year yet. And I feel like I took more time off from my business in 2020 than I ever have to just sit around with my husband and watch Netflix and relax and do all of those things. And I made a couple pivots in some programs I was offering and some things I was doing that I think are going to be really amazing in 2021 that I'm excited about, and just got even more clarity on that vision that I have for my business. So for me, 2020 was pretty good. I cannot complain. And I was very, very fortunate.
That's great, Hayley. That's actually wonderful to hear. So how can people get in touch with you if they need your services?
Absolutely. So you can head over to hayleyluckadoo.com. Everything is there. You can get linked up with Luckadoo Media. You can find the podcast, all of those things. And then come hang out with me on Instagram. I'm everywhere, but that's my favorite place to hang out. That's where I post the most. I'm just at Hayley Luckadoo. And then if you're on Clubhouse now, we host rooms for females on fire every single week. That's how me and Monica met, was through Clubhouse. So just come find me over there and give me a follow so you can join those rooms and come enjoy the conversation.
Yes, I'm definitely enjoying Clubhouse a lot. I've met some great people. Well, Hayley dropped some gems for us, and the takeaways from this episode is: 1, when hiring a social media strategist for your brand or business, be sure that they can capture your brand or business's voice. You want to speak to a few different candidates or firms to determine what will be the best fit for you. 2, entrepreneurship can be lonely. This doesn't mean that you have to go out and start a podcast like Hayley and I did, but connecting with other entrepreneurs with shared experiences is very important. I have found that all of us business owners have similar issues, just different characters. So having someone to share these experiences with can definitely help you get over the rough and rocky parts of the journey. And lastly, if you're considering buying another business, be sure to do your due diligence. Talk to current customers and employees if you can to see what the company is really like. Scrutinize the books and also check in with your gut. Does it feel like you might be missing something? Really lean into any discomfort or tension you may be feeling and ask yourself why. Don't let the potential money sway that gut feeling. I want to thank Hayley so much for sharing and letting us walk along her entrepreneurial path a bit. Please check out her podcast, Females on Fire, and contact her if you are in need of some social media strategy for your company. And before I go, I recently launched Become Your Own Boss, which includes a 21-day quick start program for those of you out there who are aspiring entrepreneurs. The program will provide you with a 21-day checklist and modules for each day to get your business launched and ready to grow. You can check it out at becomeyourownboss.school. Again, that is becomeyourownboss.school. I also have a club on Clubhouse by the same name. If you are on Clubhouse, stop by the rooms we host each week for some valuable business insight. Thanks so much for joining me on this episode. I'm grateful that you took the time to listen. Let's continue our conversation on Instagram at Stitched for Success or via the Stitch for Success Facebook group. Again, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. If you have not already, please go to Apple and rate and review. Also, if you know of anyone that can benefit from listening, please share this podcast with them. Take care and have a great one.